My mother demanded I pay $280,000 for my sister's wedding. "It's your duty," she screamed. Then came the ultimatum: either you support this family, or you leave forever. My sister smirked. I took a breath and said, "You have 24 hours to pack your things and get out of my house." If you're not yet subscribed to the channel, click the subscription button and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our stories. Your support means everything to us. If you find this story interesting, give it a like. I'd also love to know what city you're from. Leave the name of your city in the comments. Now, let's begin the story. The weight of the air in my parents' dining room was thicker than the aroma of the stew my mother, Elena, had prepared. It was a typical Tuesday night in Polanco, or so it should have been. The mahogany table, always polished to reflect the lights of the crystal chandelier, felt like the stage for a trial. I, Itzel Vargas, 32 years old, was the defendant. My crime, existing successfully. "So it's decided," my mother said, placing her wine glass down with a deliberate click. Her usually honeyed voice had an edge of steel. She wore an ivory silk dress that probably cost more than my first month's rent 10 years ago. "The wedding will be at the St. Regis. We've already spoken with the coordinator. It will be the event of the year." My younger sister, Leah, 24, looked up from her phone for the first time all evening. A lazy, satisfied smile spread across her perfect face. "It will be divine, Mom. I'm already looking at resorts in the Maldives for the honeymoon." My father, Damian, cleared his throat, a weak sound lost in the tension. He shrank in his chair, his shoulders slumped as if carrying an invisible weight. He hadn't met my eyes since I arrived. Elena slid a white leather folder across the table until it stopped right in front of me. I opened it. Inside, a detailed budget that took my breath away. A Spanish designer dress, $45,000. Venue rental and catering for 300 guests, $110,000. Flowers imported from Holland, live music, a renowned photographer. The total came to 5 million pesos, about $280,000. A number so obscene I felt a bitter laugh rise in my throat. "That's a considerable amount," I said, my voice sounding strangely calm. I fought to maintain my composure, the professional mask I wore every day at the investment fund where I was vice president. "It's an investment in your sister's future," Elena replied, as if explaining a market strategy to me. "Leah is marrying into the right family. This is crucial for all of us. For our status." "Our status," I repeated softly. "Or yours, Mom." Elena's face hardened. "Don't be impertinent, Itzel. You know perfectly well how these things work. You're the only one in this family with the means. It's your duty. It's your duty." Those 3 words had been the refrain of my life. It was my duty to give up my first bonus for Leah's journey of self-discovery. It was my duty to finance her failed fashion boutique. It was my duty to pay for her university tuition for degrees she never finished. My entire life had been a series of unsolicited duties. I hesitated, searching for the words. A part of me, the small, scared 8-year-old part, wanted to just nod and sign the check. But another part, the woman who had worked 80-hour weeks and closed multi-million-dollar deals, rebelled. My silence was my answer. Elena's hand slammed the table, making the silver cutlery jump. "Don't you dare hesitate. After everything we've done for you. What have you done for me?" I asked, my calm finally breaking. "Ignore every one of my achievements while celebrating Leah's every whim. Call me the boring numbers 1 at every social gathering." "Ungrateful," Elena hissed, her eyes flashing with fury. "We gave you a roof, food, and education. An education I paid for with Grandma's trust fund, the one that was supposed to be for both of us," I interrupted. Leah let out a mocking laugh. "Oh, big sister, still counting pennies. How pathetic." That's when Elena stood up, her figure casting a shadow over me. She looked at me with a contempt that chilled me to the bone. You have two choices, Itzel. Either you pay for your sister's wedding and accept your responsibility, or you get out of this family forever. I don't want to see you again. The ultimatum hung in the air, vibrating with venom. I looked at my father, a silent plea in my eyes. He averted his gaze, studying a non-existent spot on the Persian rug. He had abandoned me. Then I looked at Leah. She was smiling openly at me, a glint of cruel triumph in her eyes. She was enjoying my humiliation. In that moment, something inside me, something that had been cracked for years, finally shattered. The need for their approval, the longing for their love, it all vanished, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. I took a deep breath, looked them in the eyes, each one of them, and said in a voice I barely recognized as my own, "You have 24 hours to pack your things and get out of my house." The drive back to my apartment in Santa Fe felt like a time tunnel. The roar of my car's engine was a dull hum compared to the thunder of memories in my head. Each red light was a new exhibit in my personal museum of pain. First stop, 10 years ago. I was 22, and the world seemed like a bright promise. I had just graduated with honors and landed a junior analyst position. The first bonus, 100,000 pesos, about $5,500, felt like a fortune. I dreamed of making a down payment on a small apartment, my own space, my first brick in the wall of my independence. I walked into my parents' house, the envelope with the check in my hand, my heart pounding with pride. I found them in the living room, Elena and Leah, leaning over a map of Europe. "Itzel, darling," my mother exclaimed, her eyes shining with an excitement she rarely directed at me. "Just in time. We have wonderful news." Leah, having just turned 18, clapped her hands. "I'm going to Europe. A gap year to find myself." My smile faltered. "Europe? How?" "Well, that's where you come in, dear," Elena said, putting an arm around my shoulders. It was a gesture meant to be affectionate, but it felt like a net. "Your sister needs this experience. It's vital for her development, for her artistic soul. And you, with your new job, that bonus you mentioned would be the perfect start for her travel fund." The air left my lungs. My bonus? But I was thinking of using it for an apartment. "An apartment?" she finished, her tone dismissive. "Please, Itzel, you're young, you can live anywhere. Your sister only gets one chance to be young and free. Don't be selfish. Family supports each other." The word "selfish" was the final blow. It was my mother's favorite weapon, and it always hit its mark. That night, I transferred every cent of my bonus to my mother's account. The following weeks were a montage of brutal contrasts. While I worked until 10 p.m., eating instant noodles in the small room I rented, my inbox filled with emails from Leah. "Bonjour from Paris," one read, with a photo of her posing in front of the Eiffel Tower, wearing a beret and holding a baguette like a fashion accessory. Then came Rome, getting inspired by the Colosseum, with a photo of her eating gelato, her face radiant under the Italian sun. Santorini, "The sunsets here are pure poetry." Prague, discovering my bohemian roots. Each photo was a stab. It wasn't just the money, it was the ease with which she consumed experiences that I funded with my exhaustion. It was seeing my dream of independence turned into her Instagram postcards, adorned with hashtags like Wanderlust and Living My Best Life. When she returned a year later, she brought back not a profound revelation about herself, but 2 extra suitcases full of designer clothes and an even more arrogant attitude. My parents threw her a party, celebrating her bravery and her journey of growth. I didn't go to the party. I had to work the weekend to make up for the hours I'd taken off to recover from the flu. When my mother called to scold me, I told her the truth, I was exhausted and broke. Her response was a sigh of impatience. "Oh, Itzel, always so dramatic. You should be happy for your sister. Her happiness is the family's happiness." But I wasn't happy. I was tired. And for the first time, I began to suspect that in my mother's dictionary, family was just another word for Lia. The light turned green, but my mind was still stuck in the past. The next room in my museum was dedicated to Lia's business opportunities. 2 years after her return from Europe, Lia announced that her true calling was fashion. Not designing it, of course, that required work. She wanted to own a boutique. A curated shopping experience, she called it, using jargon she'd picked up from some blog. The setting was once again the dining room table. This time, Lia presented a business plan that looked more like a Pinterest collage than a financial document. I need an initial investment, she declared, looking directly at me. About 250,000 pesos, around $14,000, for the lease in La Condesa, the initial inventory, and the decor. I looked at my parents. My father, Damian, nodded with forced enthusiasm. It's a great idea. You've always had such good taste, my girl. My mother gave me her "it's your duty" look. Think about it, Itzel. You'd be a partner. It's a family investment. You're investing in your sister's future. I was no longer the 22-year-old rookie analyst. I was 26. I had seen real business plans, and Lia's was a joke. It lacked cash flow projections, market analysis, or anything resembling a strategy. Lia, I don't think, I started to say, trying to be diplomatic. You don't believe in me, she interrupted, her eyes filling with crocodile tears. It's always the same with you. You never support me. Just because you like to live in your boring spreadsheets doesn't mean I can't have a dream. The pressure was immediate. My mother accused me of being jealous. My father pleaded with his eyes for me not to cause trouble. Once again, I gave in. I signed the transfer from my savings account, watching as the money I had set aside for a master's degree turned into pine wood shelves and overpriced polyester dresses. The boutique, named Lia's Whim, opened with an extravagant party that cost another 50,000 pesos from my pocket, of course about $2,800. For the first few weeks, Lia posted glamorous photos at the store, but soon the initial enthusiasm faded. She would arrive at the shop at noon and leave at 4. She hired 2 employees whom she paid exorbitant salaries while she went on weekend trips to Valle de Bravo. The inventory didn't move because she bought clothes she liked, not what the market demanded. 6 months later, the inevitable call came. It was Lia, sobbing. I have to close. No one in this city appreciates true fashion, and the rent is a ripoff. That night, when I went to my parents' house, I found Elena consoling a heartbroken Lia. Don't worry, my love, my mother said, stroking her hair. It was a learning experience. Then she turned to me, her face hardening. I suppose you're happy now, Itzel. You were right. Is that what you wanted to hear? There wasn't a shred of acknowledgement for the 250,000 pesos that had evaporated. There was no apology, only blame redirected at me. I hadn't invested in a business. I had paid for another of Lia's expensive life lessons. And as always, the only one who learned anything was me. My money, for my family, was not an investment, it was a disposable resource. The most recent memory, and perhaps the most painful, was from last Christmas. The memory was still raw, like a wound that refuses to heal. I had arrived at dinner feeling genuinely happy, a rare feeling in that house. Just a week before, I had been promoted to vice president of the fund. It was the culmination of 10 years of sacrifice, sleepless nights, and an almost monastic dedication to my career. I arrived with a bottle of expensive wine and a small gift for each of them, my heart filled with an almost childlike anticipation. I foolishly hoped that this time would be different, that for once, my success would be a cause for family celebration. Merry Christmas, I said, entering the living room where everyone was gathered. Itzel, you're late, was my mother's greeting, without looking up from her tablet. I waited for the right moment. After the first course, during a lull in the conversation, I gathered my courage. Well, I have some news I'd like to share with you, I began, my voice a little louder than normal. This week at work, I was promoted to vice president. There was a brief silence. My father murmured, "Oh, that's nice, dear," before taking a sip of his wine. Leah yawned. "Great. That means you'll have even less time to visit us." But it was my mother who dealt the final blow. Just as I was about to explain what the new position meant, she held up her hand. Wait, you have to see this," she exclaimed, her face lit with genuine pride. She turned her tablet for everyone to see. On the screen, a shaky video showed Leah in a pottery class, sitting at a wheel, smeared with clay, laughing as a formless lump spun out of control. "Isn't she wonderful?" Elena said, her eyes gleaming. "She has a natural talent. The teacher says she has artist's hands. We're thinking of setting up a studio for her in the backyard." The rest of the evening was dedicated to discussing Leah's artistic future. There was talk of kills, types of clay, potential exhibitions. My promotion, the most significant achievement of my professional life, was swept under the rug and forgotten, as insignificant as a breadcrumb on the table. As I drove home that night, the city's Christmas lights seemed to mock me. I understood a desolate truth. To my family, my success wasn't real. It was abstract. A series of boring numbers in a distant office. They couldn't touch it, they couldn't brag about it at their social gatherings like they could with a clumsy clay vase. My success was mine, and therefore, it had no value to them. It was invisible, and by extension, so was I. And then, the oldest memory, the core of it all, the genesis of my guilt. I was 8 years old. I was playing hide-and-seek with Leah, who was just 4. Running through the living room, I tripped on the rug. My hand shot out to break my fall and hit the coffee table. On it sat the Murano glass vase my mother treasured, a wedding gift from her own mother. The sound of the glass shattering seemed to last an eternity. The silence that followed was even worse. My mother came into the room. She didn't scream. Her reaction was much more terrifying. She looked at the shards of glass scattered on the floor. Then she looked at me, frozen, silent tears streaming down my cheeks. She knelt, but not to comfort me. She took my chin gently, forcing me to look into her eyes. Her voice was a cold whisper. "It doesn't matter how much money you make in your life, Itzel, you can never repay me for this. You will always be in my debt." It wasn't a punishment, it was a sentence. And that sentence was repeated in 1,000 different ways over the years. When I needed money for a schoolbook, do you think money grows on trees? You still owe me a vase. When I made a teenage mistake, always disappointing, just like the day you broke the only valuable thing your grandmother ever gave me. That broken vase became the metaphor for my existence in that house. I was the one who broke things, the one who cost money, the one who was always in debt. Leah was the one to be protected, the fragile and precious one. Without realizing it, I had spent the next 24 years of my life trying to pay an impossible debt, trying to repair something that could never be replaced, not because it was valuable, but because my mother had decided its value was my eternal guilt. The morning sun streamed through the large windows of my office on the 40th floor of a tower in Santa Fe. The Mexico City skyline stretched out before me, a sea of concrete and ambition. This place was my sanctuary, a space I had built with logic, discipline, and results. Here, emotions were translated into data, and crises were managed with strategies, not blackmail. My assistant, a brilliant young woman named Sophia, walked in with a tablet in her hand, her expression a mix of confusion and apology. "Ms. Vargas, excuse the interruption. There's an unusual situation." "Tell me, Sophia," I said, not looking up from a market report. An invoice just arrived, along with a rather insistent follow-up call. "It's from a wedding planner, an Antoine de la Roche." I looked up. "Antoine de la Roche?" "Yes, it's for your sister's wedding. The invoice is for 500,000 pesos. I felt a chill run down my spine. 500,000 pesos. For what? Sophia swallowed, visibly uncomfortable. It's an upgrade to the decoration package. They're calling it the diamond package. It includes a wall of white orchids and hanging Swarovski crystals. I remained silent, waiting for the truly unbelievable part. Mr. de la Roche says he spoke with your sister this morning, Sophia continued, and she approved the upgrade. She said, and I quote, "Don't worry, my sister will take care of it. She's the vice president, she has money to spare." The audacity left me breathless. It wasn't just the money, it was the presumption. It was the way Leah used my title, my job, my reputation, as if it were her own unlimited credit card. And that's not all, Sophia added quietly. Mr. de la Roche called Human Resources directly to verify your corporate line of credit. He said it was to confirm that the payment would be processed without any issues. The blood boiled in my veins. This was no longer a family drama confined to the four walls of a house in Polanco. This was an incursion, an invasion of my territory, my professional life, the world I had built precisely to escape them. They had crossed a line I didn't even know existed. The humiliation was instant and profound. My colleagues, my team, the HR department, they were all now witnesses to my family's dysfunction. Leah hadn't just exposed me, she had made me look financially irresponsible, a person who mixes her personal disasters with her professional affairs. In my world, that was a death sentence. Sophia, I said, my voice dangerously calm. Get me Attorney Becerra on the line. Tell him it's an emergency. And please, draft an email to Mr. de la Roche. Inform him that any future communication must be directed exclusively to my lawyer, and that if he contacts anyone at this company again, I will consider it harassment. Right away, Ms. Vargas. When Sophia left, I stood up and walked to the window. I looked at the city, my city, the city I had conquered. And I realized the war wasn't on those streets. The war was in my own blood. And that war, the one they had waged against me for 32 years, had just had its final battle. They had fired their last bullet. Now it was my turn to fight back. If this story is gripping you, if you've ever felt like Itzel, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss how this ends. And leave me a comment telling me which city you're watching from. Every comment helps this story reach more people who need to hear it. Thank you so much for your support. I stood by the window for what felt like an hour. The sun was rising, but inside me, something was setting. It was the sun of hope, the foolish, persistent hope that one day my family would change, that they would see my value beyond my bank account. Instead, I saw the truth with brutal clarity. I wasn't their daughter, I was their asset, an asset that had matured and that they were now trying to liquidate. The broken vase, the trip to Europe, the boutique, Christmas, the wall of orchids, they weren't isolated incidents. They were a strategy, a long-term campaign of exploitation executed with the precision of a general and the cruelty of a tyrant. And the architect of it all, the general, had always been my mother. My hand trembled as I reached for my phone. I didn't call my mother. I didn't call my father. I called the only person in that family who had always looked at me like a person, not an investment, my uncle Felipe. Felipe was my father's younger brother, his polar opposite. While my father had slid into a life of appearances and silent regrets, Felipe had built a successful auto shop business from the ground up. He was a loud man, honest to a fault, and allergic to pretense. He despised Elena with a passion he barely concealed at family gatherings. He answered on the second ring. Niece. What's the miracle? Tired of swimming with sharks yet? His warm, unfiltered voice was like a bomb. I started to cry, not with hysterical sobs, but with silent, exhausted tears. I told him everything. The dinner, the ultimatum, the $280,000, the call from the wedding planner. There was a long silence on the other end of the line, followed by a string of curses that would make a trucker blush. That woman, he finally growled. I swear, Itzel, I knew this day would come. Your mother has been playing the grand dame of Polanco with your money for too long. I don't know what to do, uncle, I whispered. Yes, you do, he said, his tone turning serious. You know you have to stop her. This isn't about money anymore. They are destroying your soul. He paused. Listen to me carefully. There's something I've never told you. Something your father made me swear I would never reveal. But to hell with that, you need to know. I sat up, my heart pounding. Do you remember about 8 years ago, he continued. When they suddenly sold the country clubhouse in Cuernavaca and your father stopped going on his business trips to Las Vegas? Vaguely, I said. Mom said they were simplifying their lives. Felipe let out a dry laugh. Simplifying. Right. The truth is, your father was up to his neck in gambling debts. He owed a fortune to some very dangerous people. He was about to lose everything. The house, what was left of his business, everything. I felt a pit in my stomach. Gambling debts? Yes. Your mother found out and took charge. It was hell for a couple of months. She sold everything she could to get cash, and then suddenly, everything just calmed down. Too quickly. I remember she told me she had found a creative solution to protect the family assets. And I remember she made you sign a bunch of papers. Said they were for some tax restructuring nonsense. I never believed her. Elena doesn't make a move unless there's a catch. The pieces of the puzzle began to click into place, forming a monstrous picture. The papers I signed without reading. My mother's urgency. My father's suspicious relief. Uncle, I said, my voice barely a thread. Do you think she? I don't know what she did, niece, he interrupted, but I know it wasn't clean, and I know you were at the center of it. You have to find out, Itzel. You have to see what that woman made you sign. Look for those papers. That's the key to everything. I hung up with my uncle Felipe, my mind racing a mile a minute. Gambling debt, creative solution, the papers. It was as if a fog that had covered my life for 8 years was beginning to lift, revealing a landscape of deceit. My next call was to Attorney Becerra. He is the best real estate and corporate lawyer in the city, a man whose reputation as a meticulous shark was well deserved. I had hired him for several acquisitions for the fund, and I knew his loyalty lay with whoever paid his fees, not with family ties. Attorney Becerra, I said, my voice firm, devoid of the earlier emotion. I need your help. It's urgent and completely confidential. I gave him the details, my parents' names, the address of the house in Polanco, and a specific time window 8 years ago. I want you to investigate any transaction, any property, or trust movement related to that address and those people. I want to know exactly what papers I signed. Spare no expense. I want answers by the end of the day. Understood, MS. Vargas, Becerra replied, his professional tone without a hint of curiosity. You will receive my report. The next 5 hours were the longest of my life. I tried to work, but the words in the financial reports blurred. Every time the phone rang, my heart leaped. I replayed the conversation with my uncle over and over. My father's bankruptcy was not a surprise. He had always been a dreamer, not an executor. But a gambling addiction. That explained the desperation, the secrecy. And my mother. My mother was not a victim. She was a strategist. She had seen the ship sinking, and instead of finding a life raft for everyone, she had thrown me overboard to lighten the load. At 6 p.m., my private line rang. It was Becerra. Ms. Vargas, I have the documents, he said. His voice, normally impassive, had a nuance of astonishment. Are you somewhere you can speak freely? Yes, I replied, closing my office door. Good. What I've found is audacious. Extremely audacious. And in my opinion, morally reprehensible. But legally, it's a work of art. Get to the point, counselor. 8 years ago, you did not sign papers for a tax restructuring. You signed a purchase and sale agreement. I froze. What? You bought the property in Polanco. The transaction was registered on December 15, 8 years ago. The seller was your father, Damian Vargas. The buyer, Itzel Vargas. That's impossible. I never had the money to. Yes, you did, Becerra interrupted. The payment was made through a trust, the same trust your maternal grandmother established for you. According to the records, your mother, as your financial guardian at the time, authorized the liquidation of a significant portion of that fund for a strategic real estate investment. The money was transferred to your father, who presumably used it to pay his debts. And the house. The house was put in your name. Free and clear of any mortgage. The world tilted on its axis. The air in my office felt thick, impossible to breathe. Every property tax payment they had me automatically deduct for years, every time my mother said, "We're investing in our home," every sacrifice I made believing I was helping my family, it was all a lie. I wasn't helping. I was being robbed. So, I whispered, the realization crashing down on me like a ton of concrete. I've been living like a guest in my own house. And they've been living rent-free in my property while demanding I pay their bills. Exactly, Becerra confirmed. Legally, your parents have been your non-contractual tenants for 8 years. They owe you a fortune in unpaid rent. Ms. Vargas, the house is yours. Unquestionably. And you have every right to do with it as you please, including, of course, asking them to leave. I hung up the phone. The initial shock gave way to a fury so pure and cold it scared me. It wasn't a hot, explosive anger, it was a glacial, calculating rage. The anger of a woman who had been robbed not only of her money but of her history, her trust, her very identity within her family. They had turned me into their secret landlady, their anonymous benefactor, while treating me like a servant. The strategist in me, the vice president who managed millions, awoke. This was no longer a family matter. It was a hostile takeover. And I had just discovered I owned all the shares. The fury settled, crystallizing into an unbreakable purpose. I no longer felt pain or sadness. I felt power, the power of the truth and a notarized property deed. I paced my office, the city skyline turning into a chessboard. For years, they had moved the pieces, and I had been a sacrificial pawn. Now, the board was mine. Just kicking them out wasn't enough. That would be too simple, too private. The deception had been systemic and prolonged. The revelation had to be public and devastating. They had to fall from the same height they had climbed using my back as a ladder. And then I remembered my mother's obsession, status. Her world revolved around appearances, about what others would say, about her position in Mexico's high society. Her greatest asset was her reputation as a philanthropist, as the matriarch of a perfect family. There it was. Her Achilles heel. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. A quick search confirmed what I already knew. My mother, Elena Vargas, was the chairwoman of the organizing committee for the annual Golden Hearts Foundation Gala, her vanity project, an event where the city's elite paid fortunes for a mediocre dinner to see and be seen. The gala was in 2 weeks. It was the perfect stage. I called my assistant. "Sophia, I need you to do something for me. It's unusual, so listen carefully." "Of course, Ms. Vargas. I want you to contact the Golden Hearts Foundation. Tell them the investment fund I work for is interested in being a platinum sponsor for their annual gala." There was a pause. "The platinum sponsorship, ma'am. That's a $14,000 commitment." "I know. Authorize it. But there's one condition. It's non-negotiable. As part of the sponsorship, the company requests that I, as vice president, give one of the keynote speeches of the evening. The topic will be family values and legacy in the modern business world. I could almost hear Sophia's smile through the phone. Understood. A speech on family values. How appropriate. Anything else? Yes. Contact Attorney Becerra again. Tell him I need him to prepare a simple, clear, professional presentation with all the documents he found. The property deed, the trust transaction, the county records. I want it ready to be projected on a large screen. And tell him I need him to attend the gala as my guest. He should come prepared to act. Consider it done, Sophia said, her voice now filled with enthusiastic complicity. I hung up and leaned back in my chair, a genuine smile forming on my lips for the first time in days. It was a risky plan, theatrical, even cruel. But cruelty, I had learned, was sometimes just justice with a different name. My mother wanted a stage to show off her perfect family. I was going to give it to her. I was going to walk onto her stage, in front of her audience, under her lights, and show her entire world the truth about the Vargas family values. The show was about to begin, and I would be the star. The grand ballroom of the Four Seasons Hotel was a sea of silk, diamonds, and fake smiles. Crystal chandeliers cast a golden light on the elite of Mexico City, a closed ecosystem where a person's worth was measured by their spouse's last name and the balance of their foreign bank account. It was my mother's natural habitat. And tonight, Elena was the queen. I watched her from my table, the Platinum Sponsors table, strategically located near the stage. She wore a blood-red designer gown, her hair perfectly coiffed, her smile radiant as she greeted senators, business tycoons, and socialites. She was the personification of grace and Chirisha living lie. Beside her, my father, Damian, looked like a ghost in a tuxedo, nodding and smiling at the right moments. And Leah. Leah was in her element, preening in a silver dress that left little to the imagination, already introducing herself to everyone as the future Mrs. de la Fuente, even though her engagement hung by a $280,000 thread that didn't exist. When they saw me, my mother approached, her face a mask of maternal affection for the audience. Itzel, darling. How wonderful that your company decided to support our cause. I'm so proud that you're finally learning to give back a little of the much you have. Her words were sugar-coated poison. Everyone within a 10-foot radius had heard it, the successful but selfish daughter, finally guided by her mother's noble example. I do what I can, Mom, I replied with an equally fake smile. Several people came over to say hello, many of them clients or acquaintances from the financial world. Itzel, a real estate mogul, exclaimed. Your mother won't stop talking about your sister's wedding. She says it's going to be the event of the decade. You must be so excited. Ecstatic, I said, my voice flat. Attorney Becerra, my guest, sat beside me, impeccable in his dark suit. He observed the scene with the clinical distance of a surgeon before an operation. In his leather briefcase, next to his chair, rested our scalpel, a laptop with the presentation and a folder with physical copies of every document. At 9 o'clock sharp, the lights dimmed. My mother walked onto the stage under a spotlight, met with enthusiastic applause. Good evening, dear friends, generous souls, she began, her voice resonating with rehearsed sincerity. Tonight, we celebrate not just charity, but the very pillar of our society, family. A murmur of approval went through the room. Family is sacrifice, she continued. It's putting the needs of others before your own. It's building a legacy not of material wealth, but of values. In my own family, we have always believed in supporting the next generation, in giving them wings to fly, no matter the cost. As she spoke, a slideshow began on the giant screen behind her, photos of her on charity missions, photos of our happy family, and then a recent photo of Leah, smiling, showing off her engagement ring. And that is why my husband and I are incredibly proud to support our youngest daughter, Leah, as she embarks on the most important journey of her life. Her wedding will be a celebration of these values, a testament to the love and unconditional support that define our family. The irony was so thick I could almost taste it. She was using this public stage to reinforce the narrative, to corner me even further, making it socially impossible for me to refuse to pay. It was a masterstroke of manipulation. The audience applauded, moved. Elena smiled, drinking in their adoration. And speaking of the next generation and success, she said, her gaze finding mine across the ballroom. It is my special honor to introduce our next speaker, a woman who proves that with the right family support, there are no limits. My daughter, my pride, Vice President Itzel Vargas. The lights moved to me, and applause filled the room. I stood up, smoothed my simple but elegant black pantsuit, and walked to the stage. As I passed my family's table, Leah whispered, "You better not embarrass us." I took the microphone. My heart was pounding, but my mind was calm. I looked out at the audience, at all those expectant faces. Then I looked at my mother, who was watching me from the front row, her face puffed up with pride in her own magnanimity. She had no idea I was about to detonate a bomb in the center of her perfect universe. "Thank you, Mom," I began, my voice clear and firm, echoing in the silent hall. "Thank you for that moving introduction and for your words on sacrifice and family values. It's a topic that has been on my mind a lot recently." A polite smile spread across the audience. They were expecting a standard corporate speech filled with clichés about empowerment and legacy. My mother spoke of building a legacy, and it made me think. What is a legacy, really? Is it what we say we are? Or is it what we do when we think no one is watching? I paused, letting the questions hang in the air. I'd like to share with you a short personal story about finance, legacy, and the true meaning of family support. I glanced towards the back of the room, where Attorney Becerra was standing discreetly next to the audiovisual technician. I gave him an almost imperceptible nod. It was the signal. You see, 8 years ago, my family faced a financial crisis. A delicate situation that required a creative solution, as my mother called it. I, at 24 years old and trusting my parents blindly, signed a series of documents they told me were to protect the family assets. Behind me, the giant screen flickered, changing from the smiling photo of Leah to a crisp, high-resolution image of a legal document. It was the property deed for the house in Polanco. A ripple of confusion went through the room. What I didn't know, I continued, my voice gaining strength, is that I wasn't signing a tax restructuring. I was signing a purchase and sale agreement. The murmur turned into a collective gasp. In the front row, my mother's face went from confusion to panic. My father turned white as a sheet. With money from a trust fund my grandmother left me, I purchased the family home to save my father from a gambling debt that threatened to destroy us. The screen changed, showing the trust fund statement with the transfer clearly marked. Then, the county record with my name as the sole owner. Each document was a bullet, and I was firing them one by one. So for the last 8 years, while I have worked tirelessly, believing I was contributing to a family home, the reality is that I have been paying the taxes on a property that was already mine. I have been the anonymous landlady to my own parents, who have lived in my house without paying a single cent of rent. The silence in the hall was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop. The media cameras that had been lazily filming were now focused intently first on the screen, then on me, then on my family's table. This story could have remained a painful secret, but 2 nights ago, this farce reached a new level. I was demanded to pay 5 million pesos for my sister's wedding. My voice cracked for an instant, not from weakness, but from long-suppressed rage. I was given an ultimatum. Pay for the wedding, or be cast out of the family. Be thrown out of my own house. Pandemonium erupted. People turned to stare at my family, their faces a mixture of shock, disbelief, and morbid delight. Leah jumped to her feet, screaming, "It's a lie. You're lying. Every document you see on this screen is a public record," I answered, my voice now resonating with unshakable authority. Anyone can verify it at the public registry of property. The evidence is irrefutable. My mother spoke of sacrifice, I said, looking directly at Elena, whose eyes were filled with pure hatred. And I have sacrificed my money, my trust, and my dignity for too long. She spoke of family values, and I have learned that true family value is truth. And the truth is that exploitation is not love. Blackmail is not care. And generosity is not an obligation, it is a choice. I turned back to the audience. So, as the legal and financial owner of the house where my family resides, I have made a decision based on these new family values. My attorney, Mr. Becerra, will now deliver the corresponding notice. While I was still on stage, Attorney Becerra began walking from the back of the room. Every step he took on the plush carpet echoed like the bang of a judge's gavel. The silence was absolute, broken only by the clicks of cameras from the society photographers, who were now documenting the event not as a charity gala but as the scene of a crime. Becerra reached my family's table. Damian seemed to have shrunk to half his size. Leah was trembling with rage, tears streaking her perfect makeup. Elena glared at him as if he were an executioner. With theatrical calm, Becerra placed a sleek leather folder on the table, right in front of my father. Mr. Damian Vargas, Mrs. Elena Vargas, Becerra said, his lawyer's voice clear and emotionless, amplified by the silence. On behalf of my client, Ms. Itzel Vargas, the legal owner of the property located at the address you currently inhabit, I am formally serving you with an eviction notice. A choked sob escaped my mother's lips. You have 24 hours from this moment to vacate the property and remove all your personal belongings, Becerra continued, unfazed. Any attempt to delay or obstruct this process will result in immediate legal action. He turned to the adjacent table, where several members of the Foundation's board were sitting, watching the scene in horror. And for full transparency, given Mrs. Vargas's position as president of this foundation, I have prepared copies of all documentation for the board of directors. He handed an identical folder to the businessman who had asked me about the wedding earlier. The man opened it, his eyes scanning the documents. His jaw tightened. Elena, he muttered, his voice filled with disbelief. Is this true? You sold the house to your daughter and have been living off her. It's a family misunderstanding, my father shouted, his voice finally returning. There's no misunderstanding in a notarized property deed, Damian, the businessman retorted, throwing the folder on the table. Leah's fiancé's mother, an imposing woman, stood up, walked to her son, took him by the arm, and said loudly for all to hear, "We are leaving. This engagement is cancelled. We will not associate our family with this fraud." No. Leah shrieked, lunging towards them, but her fiancé didn't even look at her. He left with his mother, leaving Leah alone in the middle of the ballroom, the diamond on her ring now as worthless as her family's promises. The scene disintegrated into total chaos. Elena slumped in her chair, sobbing hysterically. Damian tried to calm her, but his hands were shaking too much. Leah, in a fit of rage, tried to run towards the stage to confront me but was intercepted by hotel security. I remained at the podium, watching the destruction I had wrought. I didn't feel triumph, I didn't feel joy. Just an immense emptiness and a sense of finality. The theater of hypocrisy had come to an end. The curtain had fallen, and the main actors were finally exposed under the harsh light of truth. The next 48 hours were a tsunami. The story wasn't just the talk of the elite, it exploded across the country. The video of my speech, recorded by dozens of cell phones and the gala's official cameras, went viral. The headlines in the next morning's papers were brutal. The philanthropist who lived off her daughter. Scandal in high society. Heiress evicts parents from her own mansion. The world my mother had so carefully constructed collapsed with spectacular speed. Before noon, the Golden Hearts Foundation issued a statement announcing Elena Vargas's irrevocable resignation as president and the launch of a full external audit of its finances. Her name, once synonymous with elegance, was now synonymous with fraud. Her friends, the same ones who kissed her on both cheeks at the gala, stopped answering her calls. The country club where my father played golf suspended his membership. They were declared social pariahs. For Leah, the consequences were just as swift and cruel. The cancellation of her engagement was only the beginning. The boutiques where she had opened accounts closed them. Her friends removed her from their WhatsApp groups. Her identity, built entirely on the status and money of her family, which was actually mine, evaporated. She discovered that without the family name and the checkbook, she was nobody. I received dozens of messages. Some from distant relatives, like my Aunt Gloria, called me a monster and a family destroyer. But most were supportive. Colleagues, old university friends, even acquaintances expressed their admiration for my courage. "We always knew there was something off with your family," wrote a childhood friend. "We never understood how you put up with so much." The most unexpected reaction came from Leah's now ex-fiancé. He sent me a short, concise email, "Thank you. I suspected their finances were a house of cards. You saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life." It was confirmation that their world of appearances already had cracks. I had just given the final push. My uncle Felipe called, his voice booming with pride. "That's my girl. You gave them a lesson they'll never forget." His validation felt like the only genuine family hug I had received in years. While the media storm raged, I locked myself in my apartment, not out of fear or shame, but to process it all. I had won, I had exposed the truth, but the victory felt hollow, tinged with the sadness of what I never had, a real family. The next day, at 6 p.m., 24 hours after the notice, I drove to the house in Polanco. My house. Not to gloat, but to ensure the eviction was carried out. Attorney Becerra was already there, along with a supervisor from a moving company. The scene was surreal. Furniture that had been part of the landscape of my life was being wrapped in plastic. Cardboard boxes labeled "fragile" were piled in the foyer. The house, stripped of its ornaments, seemed smaller, sadder. I found my parents and Leah in the living room, sitting among boxes like castaways on an island of their own making. Leah stood up when she saw me, her eyes bloodshot. "I hope you're happy," she spat. "You've destroyed everything." "No, Leah," I replied calmly. "I didn't destroy anything. I just turned on the light in a room that was always a mess." My mother said nothing. She was sitting on the floor, her gaze lost, her grande dame facade completely shattered. She looked like a stranger. It was my father who finally spoke. He rose slowly, his movements those of an old man. For the first time in my life, he looked me directly in the eye, without fear, without evasion, and I saw something I had never seen before, overwhelming shame. "Your uncle was right," he said, his voice hoarse. "The gambling consumed me. I owed money to the wrong people. I was going to lose it all, Itzel. Your mother. She just wanted to save face, protect the family name. And the best way to do that was to steal from her own daughter?" I asked, without a hint of anger, just exhausted curiosity. "It was her idea," he whispered, and in that simple phrase, he shed years of complicity. "She said it was the only way, that you had the trust, that it was family money anyway. She convinced me, and I let her because I was a coward." He walked towards me, his eyes full of tears. "Forgive me, my child. Please. I failed you in every possible way." It was the first sincere apology I had ever received from him in my life. It didn't change anything, but it meant something. Elena finally looked up. "So now what?" she asked, her voice empty. "Are you going to leave us on the street?" The old Itzel, the one who lived to please her, would have given in. But that Itzel had died on the stage the night before. "No," I said, my voice as firm as steel. "I'm not a monster. I have made arrangements for you to move into a furnished apartment in the Del Valle neighborhood. It's paid for 6 months. I have also transferred a sum of money to a new account in Dad's name. It's enough for you to start over. And I have prepaid for 12 sessions of family and addiction therapy for you. It's mandatory. They stared at me, stunned. But let me be clear, I continued, my gaze fixed on my mother. This is the end of the Bank of Eitzel. There will be no more money, no more bailouts, and no more contact until I decide. You are going to learn to live with the consequences of your actions. The relationship we had is over. If we ever want to have a new one, it will be built on my terms. And my terms are truth and respect. 2 things you never gave me. I turned to leave. Eitzel, my mother called out. Her voice was barely a whisper. Why? I stopped at the door. Because despite everything, I want you to get better, I said without looking at her. Not for me. For yourselves. You've lived a lie for so long, you've forgotten what the truth feels like. And with that, I walked out of the house, closing the door on my past. 6 months passed. 6 months of blessed silence. The house in Polankami House underwent a radical transformation. I tore down walls, both literally and figuratively. The dark, heavy furniture was donated. The Persian rugs were replaced with light wood floors. The study where my father hid his debts is now my library, filled with books and natural light. I painted the walls white, a clean canvas, a new beginning. My father writes me an email every week. He tells me about his progress in Gamblers Anonymous. He tells me he's found a part-time job as an accountant. They are clumsy emails, filled with a regret that feels real. I read them, but I don't respond yet. My mother and Leah live together in the Del Valle apartment. According to my uncle Felipe, my mother rarely leaves. Leah works as a sales associate at a department store. They haven't gone to therapy yet. Some people choose to stay in the prison they know. I, on the other hand, have rediscovered what a family is. My chosen family. My uncle Felipe, my closest friends, my team at work. Every Thursday, I host a dinner party at my house. The dining room, once a courtroom, now resonates with genuine laughter and honest conversations. I have rebuilt my life on a foundation of truth. My success is no longer a shameful secret, it's a celebration. My generosity is no longer an obligation, it's a conscious choice. I help a foundation that supports young people who have suffered financial abuse within their families, teaching them to set boundaries, to say no. Last night, standing in my kitchen preparing dinner for my friends, the evening sun flooding the room, I felt a peace I had never known before. It wasn't the peace of victory, but the peace of authenticity. The peace of knowing who I am, not in relation to others' expectations, but in relation to myself. I got my house back, yes. But more importantly, I got my life back. The question sometimes comes back to me in the quiet nights, an echo of the 8-year-old girl who broke a vase. The doubt that society imposes on women who choose to break not an object, but a cycle of abuse. The question I now leave to you, was I wrong? Thank you for watching this story to the end. If it moved you, if you identified with it, or if you simply believe in the power of truth, please give this video a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Your support is essential for us to keep growing.